there has to be a power that is greater than the human brain.
God is just a personification of human desires, a supernatural sky daddy.
Do you ever find yourself almost praying and then stopping yourself?
No.
How often do you admit you're wrong?
I don't have to answer all your questions.
You don't have to, but you're a man who normally answers questions.
In this video, Richard Dawkins says something that just makes absolutely no sense. So stick around to see what I'm referring to, and I'm going to help you get a little bit deeper into the mind of Richard Dawkins here. And if you have any disagreements or any comments or suggestions of things that I may be missing or may not be seeing, let's have a discussion with it in the comments section below. With that being said, let's go.
Let's talk about this issue of God, because we had a long chat about this last time. I do believe, for what it's worth, I do believe in God. I do believe in an afterlife. I find it comforting. I also find, as I said to you last time, I find it explains things which are otherwise completely inexplicable. And we had a guest on recently, Professor Stephen C. Meyer, who's a prominent believer in intelligent design, or what he calls the God hypothesis. He watched our last interview that you and I had, and this is what he said about it.
Dawkins wants to portray theistic belief as if it's equivalent to belief in fairies, and he'll concede that, well, it's possible. But I think there's a stronger argument for the theistic case. And that is that when scientists and philosophers reason from evidence, they typically use a method of reasoning that has a technical name. It's called inferring to the best explanation, where the best explanation is one where you're invoking a cause which has the kind of powers that would be required to explain the phenomenon of interest. And you correctly pointed out in your conversation with him that when you get back to that, what physicists often call the singularity, the point where matter, space, time, and energy begin to exist, the materialist is really up against a huge conundrum, because prior to the origin of matter, there is no matter to do the causing. That's what we mean by the origin of matter, that's where it starts.
Right.
And so if you want to invoke a cause which is sufficient to explain the origin of matter, you can't invoke matter. It's in principle, the materialistic explanations are in principle insufficient. So you need to invoke something which is external to the material universe and is not bounded by time and space as well. And that starts to paint a picture of the kind of cause you would need that has the sort of attributes the traditional theists have traditionally associated with God.
Now, you see, Richard Dawkins, this is the nub of, I think, my whole issue with your position on this. And you can respond, obviously, to what you just heard in a moment. But given your new book is about the genetic book of the dead, and it effectively takes us from here to in perpetuity on a genetic trail where each part of existence feeds the next and so on. And I totally subscribe to that. The genome of every body and every organisation and so on creates, as you say, a comprehensive dossier on all the world as it moves forward. I get it. But when you go back to the very start, what is there before that? And that, I think I asked you last time, and Professor Meyer brought that up again as being the flaw in your position, which is, what is there before it starts? What is nothing?
This is a question for a physicist, not a biologist, but what I would answer to Professor Meyer is that we need to explain complexity in terms of simplicity. And of course it's true that I cannot say what was there before the Big Bang. Physicists sometimes tell us that the word before doesn't even mean anything before the Big Bang. But whatever it was, it
but it has to, doesn't it?
You cannot suddenly invoke...
Doesn't it have to? I mean, someone as logical as you are, and I believe you are, you think about this all very logically. A logical mind surely has to appreciate that before the Big Bang, there has to have been something before then. Otherwise, what is nothing?
A physicist will tell you that
yeah, but what do you tell me?
I'm trying to tell you what a physicist would say first of all. They would say that you cannot use the word before for the Big Bang. Time began at the Big Bang. There was no before the Big Bang. I know it's contrary to common sense. Physicists don't necessarily deal with common sense.
Well, it makes no sense, does it? And that's what I mean. I think you're a logical man. That cannot make sense to you. The idea that you're not even allowed to use the word before the Big Bang, when every part of both of our brains tells us that that's obviously nonsensical, doesn't that make you think again?
We are not physicists. I, like you, am completely baffled by what physicists say to me, which is that you cannot use the word before for before the Big Bang. Time itself began at the Big Bang. Now that is totally counterintuitive. It's counterintuitive to me, it's counterintuitive to you, it's counterintuitive to Stephen Meyer, but we are not physicists. And you need to talk to a physicist. Talk to a physicist about that. And they will tell you that you cannot use the word before for the Big Bang.
Yeah, but you think that's as preposterous as I do.
I do, because I'm not a physicist.
You've just written a book as a biologist called The Genetic Book of the Dead, in which you talk about the body and the genome, comprehensive dossiers and so on. So you're prepared to expound a philosophy based on that as a biologist, which I completely respect, and it makes perfect sense. The book makes perfect sense the way that you have written it. But why would you then think that a physicist cannot be contradicted just simply because they're a physicist? I could contradict what you say as a biologist.
No, you really aren't getting it. I'm so sorry. Modern physics is exceedingly mysterious. It really is. I mean, have you tried to read some of the difficult modern physics books? It really is very difficult to understand. And intuition doesn't do it. You cannot use human intuition. Human intuition was built up by evolution over many millions of years to survive on the African plain, hunting and gathering, looking for water holes, looking for mates and so on. Our brains were not built to understand the profundities of the origin of the universe, the end of the universe, the kind of things that physicists deal with. I think it's actually amazing that at least some human brains are capable of dealing with this kind of stuff. My brain isn't, and nor is yours.
No, but that's my point, though.
I wish it were.
Well, yeah, I wish both our brains could. But the truth is, it's because the human brain can't comprehend this, including, I don't think, any physicist. Because the moment they say you can't have before the Big Bang, they lose me completely just on a common sense perspective. It's that reason that I think there has to be a power that is greater than the human brain. And that gives me succor to my belief in God, and why I think people turn to gods of different types, obviously. They turn to that because it is incomprehensible otherwise what has happened here.
There has to be something more difficult to understand than the human brain can understand. I accept that. But it doesn't have to be God. It doesn't have to be the kind of God who, I don't know, forgives sins and listens to prayers and things like that. There is something very mysterious, and I don't understand it, and you don't understand it, and maybe we never will. I think it's not clear whether physicists understand it. Some do, some don't, but it's obviously going to be very mysterious. But God is not that interesting mystery. God is just a personification of human desires, a father figure, something like that, somebody who looks after you. You said at the beginning that it was comforting for you. A God is somebody who listens to prayers, who forgives sins, who takes action for the benefit of humanity or not, as the case may be. We're not talking about that now. We're talking about deeply, deeply mysterious, profound things, which physics is working on, and it's very difficult to understand. And the fact that you don't understand it and I don't understand it is not good grounds for suddenly invoking a supernatural sky daddy.
In my opinion, Richard Dawkins is in a losing argument here, because when Piers Morgan asks him the question, what does before mean? He says, I am not a physicist. He says, it is counterintuitive to what you might think before means, and also that it's mystical. It's something that we cannot understand. Yet at the same time, it seems like he's still using his lack of knowledge and understanding, since he's not a physicist. He's trying to use that, it seems, to allow space for his worldview to be explained through the physicist, even though he doesn't understand it. Because space, time, matter, that began to exist, which implies there was something before it, something that caused its creating. Yet he says this statement that, well, we're not a physicist, but they say it doesn't actually mean before. It doesn't mean that. Therefore, he's almost using his lack of ignorance to try and explain or justify in the realm of a physicist that his worldview is more grounded and founded in his lack of knowledge and understanding. Yet in response to what Piers Morgan is asking about what before means, he's saying, you know what? I don't know. I'm not a physicist, and it's too mystical for us to understand. But at the same time, just understand before doesn't mean before. That's a weak argument, because he's trying to take away what we actually see through creation, that it did begin to exist. So what he's doing here is he's saying just believe in what the physicist says, while he's using it at the same time to defend his argument and what he presupposes about creation. Bear with me, because like I said, I'm going to help you get into the mind of what Richard Dawkins does. He doesn't really care to look into certain things that are really important to defending the position and claims that you hold and make. And I'll give you more proof of that here in a moment, but one more thing is that he was on a show with Piers Morgan before, and this same question was asked about before. And with that being said, you would think that it's such an important question that he would be prepared to give an answer for this when he was already on the show. With that being said, whenever somebody asks me a question and I don't have an answer for it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and do my best to search out that answer and understand it myself, and then bring that evidence to whoever is asking me and help them understand what I understood about it. In his case, he could have went to a physicist. He could have tried to understand what is better going on in the realm of being a physicist. They could have broken it down in a way that makes somewhat sense, at least for him to give a better answer than, oh, it doesn't mean what you think it means. Now take a look at this short video of Alex O'Connor, who is another atheist, calling Richard Dawkins out for not looking deeper into certain evidences that he should be looking into.
Studies theology in that manner. Do you not think that it can be useful in the sense that understanding those controversies can help people to debunk
Good point.
them?
Yes, probably can.
And I mean, the way that you talk about theology might put someone off trying to do that.
Could be. Yes. Yeah, that's a fair point. Well, okay, but I mean, why would I bother to read Christian theology any more than Australian Aboriginal theology?
Because it's what you're doing. It's what you're engaging with.
I've got better things to do. I do science.
If you're an atheist, this means that you don't believe in God. And in the realm that Richard Dawkins is in the world of debate, it seems like you should be able to study the evidence of Christianity, or the very thing that you are trying to come against. Just like Alex O'Connor said, it's just what you're doing. You should look into the other side and other forms of evidence to better understand it, because guess what? You are looking at what you believe to be true, what you are interested in, and you are forming your own conclusion based on what concerns you. But when you are trying to search for truth, you are forced to go to other worldviews and look at other statements and claims that are being made. Then you'll be able to give a more conclusive and justifiable answer. So with that being said, I just want to challenge everybody that is watching this to don't be so narrow-minded in the sense that you think you know enough that you don't have to go to a physicist or read a physicist's book to try to better understand the very things that you say support your worldview. It's not just what you think. Now, I'm not trying to be hypercritical here, and I have my own biases, I have my own flaws here. But with that being said, I just want us to all be able to look deeper than we sometimes think we have to go. And this is no hit at Richard Dawkins. I pray for him. I want him to find Jesus Christ, and I have nothing against him. But this way of thinking is deeply flawed. So with that being said, I just pray that you have a blessed day and understand that Jesus Christ is the creator of the universe, and he wants a relationship with you. Pursue him and love him, because he loves you more than you even know right now. In Jesus' name, be blessed.